What's up, people? This is, again, your favorite Masters bodybuilder coming at you today with another vlog. Today it's story time. I'll tell you a little story. A little boring story for some, but for me, it was the beginning of a journey. And it was a cool experience. And brought back some memories. I had a client the other day ask me, how did you get into this? How long have you been, a lot of people ask, how long have you been lifting weights? How long have you been competing? How long have you been a bodybuilder? I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, practically my entire life, I've been working out or lifting weights. And anybody that knows me can attest to it. I started training seriously at 12, 13 years old, but I started working out and lifting weights with my dad at 8 years old. And the story, the fun story that goes along with this is, as a young kid, my dad was always a big guy. He's rugged, he's tough. He's almost 80 and he's still tough, he's still rugged. And he's always been fascinated with muscles and lifting. And he was one of the only people in our entire town. We live on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And in Provincetown, I'm sure you've heard of the town. I don't live there anymore, but my dad still does. He's lived there his entire life. And he was probably, he was one of the only, if not the only guy that lifted weights in his era. I mean, there were some guys that did curls and push-ups, but my dad lifted weights, and there's a difference, right? So he loved it. He loved posing, and he loved Arnold and Frank Zane and Franco Columbu. And those are the guys that they're his age, right? So he was immersed in that he was like one of the few people that really knew what bodybuilding was in our area. So my dad took me to the gym for the first time when I was 8 years old. And it wasn't your typical gym. It wasn't your fitness center with all the clean equipment and all the fancy stuff. This was a private gym that a friend of his had, and it was in the back of a workshop. Just to give it some context, there weren't even stairs to get into it. My dad had to lift me up and throw me in. I mean, he had to step on a milk crate to get into the place because there was no stairs for the back entrance. And once you were in the workshop, there was a side door to get into for the owner of the place. And only a couple people knew about it. My dad was one of them, and he let my dad train there. And all the equipment was solid black iron, old school pieces of equipment, like unique stuff that was handmade by a company. I don't even know the name of it, but it's the typical stuff that you wouldn't see it in today's gym. But I mean, it had everything in it. It had, squat rack, lat pull, like a T-bar row. It had a T-bar, and not your typical, landmine, you see today. This was like a solid T-bar that was handmade. Preacher curl, leg extensions, leg curl, had weight up to probably 120 pound dumbbells, all solid steel or iron, metal. Some of it was rusted. I mean, it was like hardcore as they get, right? No heat, no sheetrock, just a wood framed building, very small, rafters open, no ceiling. And when I walked in for the first time, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I was 8 years old, very impressionable. And as soon as I walked in, my jaw dropped as I looked around and saw all this equipment. I see in the middle of the gym, and this might be a little graphic for some, I apologize, but it is what it is. I don't really care. There was a buck, or a buck, as you know, gutted and hanging from a rope in the middle of the gym and draining and drying out, spinning. Okay, I'm 8 years old. I see this, and then on the walls around the entire perimeter of the gym up high in the rafters were black and white pictures of all the great bodybuilders of that era. Franco Columbu, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You had Ed Corney. If anybody knows Ed Corney, he's an incredible poser. The list, Lou Ferrigno. I mean, you get the picture. They were, and I'm watching these, and at the time, I had only seen Incredible Hulk on TV, Lou Ferrigno, and I was fascinated with muscle. And I was like, as a little boy, I loved big muscle, and I loved that superhero look. And then I see these real life images in black and white on the wall. So you get the picture. I'm 8, first time in the gym, I'm fascinated with muscle. Here's all these posters of the great bodybuilders of that era. A deer hanging. I mean, I think I grew an inch and my balls dropped right there. So it was quite an experience. And my dad didn't know how I was going to handle it. He knew I was a tough little kid, and so he brought me there, and he loved my reaction. And we talk about it today. But he didn't allow me to train. And contrary to what people think, oh, you shouldn't lift weights at an early age. It could stunt your growth. All that foolishness. It's not true. It's not true at all. I mean, your body's growing. You're eating. Your bones are growing. Everything's growing anyway. To be fit and to be, I mean, you got to worry about getting a hernia, hurting yourself as a young boy, not having full control of your muscle or your body. So you got to be cautious. But I wouldn't say it's dangerous to train or lift weights at an early age. You just got to be careful and there's limitations to everything, right? So my dad back then was a little cautious, but allowed me to do, you'd pull-ups, push-ups, crunches or sit-ups, basic movements, calisthenics, stretches, and I'd watch him train until I was 10. This is what I did with him when he went to the gym. When I was 10, he let me lift weights. He let me bench. He let me squat. He taught me how to train, how to lift properly for the time. And my dad was self-taught. He didn't, and again, he was from an era where he was like a pioneer, the only one in his area that did it. There weren't magazines. He didn't have the internet back then, right? So he was looking at magazines and stuff, and whatever he learned, he just learned trial and error. My dad used to train at home sometimes if he couldn't get to the gym with a towel. He would use a towel to do isometrics and plyometrics, and he would squeeze and contract and squeeze and contract. Then he would do push-ups, and I would watch him. And even to this day, sometimes he has a pair of dumbbells and push-up bars, and he'll use a towel and just pose. And I learned a lot from that, because that mind-muscle connection, knowing how to contract and feel the muscle, really helped me early on how to gain a connection in the gym when I trained. A lot of people just go through the motions. They don't really know what they're doing. But I learned early on that you have to feel the muscle, right? So I learned that from my dad, from that simple method. But getting back to the gym, he would allow me to train from the age of 10 on. I was hooked. From the age of 8 on, I was hooked. But my knowledge grew from there, and for me, I was probably one of the only ones in my area at the time, a generation later, that not only lifted weights, but competed. So I started competing at 17 years old. So I think there was 16, turned 17, did my first show. An AAU teenage Cape Cod was the show, and that was my very first show. I took second place at my first show, and I was hooked. The bug for competing was then, I was hooked. I was bitten by the bug, and I started my competition journey then. So started introduced to it at 8, started lifting at 10, started competing at 16, and here we are today at 53. So I hope the story wasn't too boring, but I just wanted to let everybody out there know, if you have a child that's interested in lifting weights, or interested in muscle, or interested in physical fitness or athletics, anything, don't discourage them because of their age or their ability or their size. Put it in front of them. Don't force it on them, but put it in front of them and see how they react. If they enjoy it, if they're interested in it, they'll let you know. I'm glad my dad did that, because it's one of my most I love it so much, even to this day. The feeling of training and accomplishment I get from sculpting and creating something out of my God-given physique. We all have genetic limitations. We all have certain limitations that make us who we are, but it's taught me discipline. It's taught me I can't even put it into words on the value that I've gained from not the sport of bodybuilding, but lifting weights and training in general. So that's my story for the day. That's all I've got. It's a short one, but whatever it is that you do, get out there and do it. God's blessed you with gifts and talents, so make something happen. And also, I'm not big on this. I'm kind of new, but if you do take the time to see this video, I thank you and I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. But if you could like and please subscribe. I'm trying to build a slight following here. There's not for any other reason than just knowledge and spreading and passing on stuff that I've learned and telling my story. So if you know of anybody that may be interested, share this video, like and subscribe. And until the next one, see you later.